Hello, with me again Sabrina with another new topic called Individual Area Sensory Integration or ASI Intervention. Let's go. Brief information about intervention. So what you need to know about this intervention is that is an intensive form of individual therapy. So why is it called intensive? Because it is conducted 2 sessions per week, and usually each session will last around 45 minutes to 1 hour. And for a child, usually it will last around 2 years or can be more depending on the child. So what you need to remember is that this intervention is not to cure autism, not to cure any kind of special needs condition, but it is done to improve CNS so that it can interpret and use sensory information functionally. So it improved the ability of the brain to receive information from stimuli and to organize the information, and then we use the information to achieve goal. So, and then later on, we can make use of the information and then to generalize it to environment. So this intervention focus on sensory processing, particularly proximal senses. So proximal senses are vestibular, proprioceptive, and tactile. So Iris is not saying that the vision, the hearing, the olfactory is not important, but usually these three will be more dominant once child's mature. And then the reason why Iris using proximal focus more on proximal senses is because it's more dominant in child's early life interaction. Iris stated that nervous system that impair function might be remediable or treated as long as they are still young. So the reason why I stated this is because of her approach related to brain plasticity. So this part I will explain more at the end of this presentation. So again, this intervention is individual basis format. So you need to know their interests and challenges because it's not a one size fit all, but it's different for each child. So even though it's individual, anyone that use this intervention need to be mindful with opportunities and the environment. So if there's a chance that came out suddenly, either in the environment that we create or outside, we need to try to allow the child to get involved. So this will create better adaptive response for the child. There are four main keys in ASI intervention. So the first one is to strike balance between structure and freedom. So as a therapist, you need to know when to step in or allow the child to make decision. So for instance, if you are doing activity, transferring colorful Play-Doh using tongue, you can step in terms of correcting their graphs, like to use tripographs. But then you need to allow them to make their own decision, like which color Play-Doh that they want to take first. Maybe they like blue or green. So to have that balance will be very helpful in terms of achieving the goal in mind. The second one is to have inner drive. So a goal will be easily to be achieved when there's inner drive in child. So you need to know the child's needs and interests because even though we are working on the goal, you need to remember that we are not focusing only to achieve but to also to enjoy. Okay, so when the child enjoy, the task itself will be more meaningful for them. The third key is active participation. So when you're creating a task, you need to remember it should be not too easy and not too hard. So to get the right level of complexity, because we don't want the child to feel threatened by a task in a way that he or she tends to escape from the task, but it's still challenging for them. And lastly is setting. So you need to remember that usually a child will receive sensory information from environment. So a sensory enriched environment will be helpful for them. And if the environment itself allow for self-exploration, that will be more helpful for the child. The foundation of ASI intervention is based on neurological based concept. So what Iris touched on this concept, there are three things. which are the first one is sensory support for development and brain function. Second one is neuroplasticity. And last one is the CNS organization. Let us start with sensory support for development and brain function. So let me quote a sentence from the book. Without adequate inflow of sensations, brain create own inputs. So this is where distorted stimuli start coming and then hallucination happen. So from this sentence itself, it shows that it is important for a child, for a person to continuously receive information from surrounding. Because when you don't have that much amount of information, sensory information, it will lead to brain abnormalities and result to behavior disorders. So usually you will see this in institution with white walls and then gated area, and most of them are in straps. So they are not exposed to sensory information. So this will affect their brain functioning in a way. So what about too much stimulation? So too much stimulation also can be dangerous because it creates stress, and of course stress will affect the brain development. So what we wanted is that the person to have that courage to explore the sensory information from the environment, and then whatever stress that they face, they slowly cope with the stress. So instead of we forced to receive as much stimulation as possible, because this will reduce the ability of the person to cope with stress. So you need to remember that we cannot force them to receive information, but they actually select the sensation that they feel that are useful at that time and organize the information so that they can achieve their goal. So for example, like learning to ride a bike, right? So they need to fall down a few times when riding bike so that they know when they feel like not balanced at the right side, then they need to move their body to the left. So from that repeated learning, by exposing them, they actually learn, they receive the information, they organize, and eventually achieve the goal, which is to ride a bike smoothly. So when you're able to select sensation and organize and then achieve goal, this is what we call sensory integration. And when you can apply sensory integration into various setting, various environment, this is what we call adaptive response. Neuroplasticity. So plasticity is ability of structure and function to be changed gradually by its own activity. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the slide, Ari stated that sensory impairment can be treated because of the linkage with brain plasticity. So Ari stated that brain plasticity can be changed. So change in terms of the structure and function. So when there's a change in the structure and function, there will be better sensory functioning, better brain functioning, and of course, better learning. So it is said that more exposure to environment, then there will be more adaptive response happen, and then there will be more changes occurs at neuronal synaptic level. So what kind of changes that you will see? So these sentences will be more using neurobiological term. So I won't go too detail on this. So there will be more than red branching, synaptic connection, synaptic efficiency, and size of brain tissue. So what I understand from this changes in this structure is that there will be more information coming in and then more information connected between neurons that it will be received much faster, much better in the brain. Hence, when they receive in the brain, then to be better learning, better sensory functioning as well. So again, remember that continuous exposure to meaningful and challenging environment will lead to better brain plasticity. The last part is the CNS organization. So in this part, it mentioned about hierarchic model, but then in the book, it doesn't really show the specific picture or figure of how the model looks like. So I imagine it to be like a tree or like a dendrite, at like the one you are seeing right now at the left side of the slide. So what it mentioned is that there are it is okay, there is a label into three parts. The top part is the cerebral hemisphere, the lowest part is the spinal cord, and the part in the middle is the brainstem. So it mentioned that the higher part, the cerebral hemisphere, will focus more on specialized information. So the work of the what the top part will focus on is to demand lower cortex to ignore any unimportant stimuli. So maybe the sound of aircon or maybe like a shine of light that is not important at the time. And then for the lower level, it focuses on filtering and refining sensory information before it is really upwards, really the message upwards. So what CNS organization related to ARIS intervention is that it mentioned it focused on the lower part, which is the critical aspect of sensory integration, because that is where the vestibular and somatosensory processing is located at. Ding ding ding! Is the end of the slide. I'd like to say thank you for listening to my presentation until the end. And if you need more detailed information, please refer back to Occupational Therapy for Children book, which is written by Case Me for Brain. Bye bye.